Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. Boy, that'll be nice. We can have. Huh? I guess we're live.
Hey! Whoopah!
Sitting here just talking away.
Yakety schmaggety.
I was actually just saying it would be nice when someday we could have an actual recording table where the mics are overhead above us and they're not on the floor.
Ooh, yeah.
And then discovered that we're live.
We're actually recording.
So.
Well.
Welcome to episode 17 of Nerdery and Murdery.
17! I am Zig with your nerdery today.
I'm Geoffrey with your murdery. This episode comes out on September 26th. Again, as we sit in our podcast Wayback Machine.
Yes.
Those of you who follow along online, this was our photo shoot day.
Yes, it was.
That we just had, and that was a ton of fun.
At the Alton Bridge. Old Alton Bridge,
the Goat Man, the Tale of the Goat Man, and supposedly haunted bridge and things like that. So we chose that, and it's pretty fun. We got a lot of looks as people watched us carry lightsabers in. There
were people on jet skis below us.
begging us to fight.
Yes. Fight! Fight!
So
pictures, man.
we were just the nerds up on the bridge. So that was a lot of fun. Just real quick as a note to everybody, if you're still here with us on episode 17, please do remember to leave a review on iTunes. It really, really, really helps us.
Yes.
Helps us reach people who we may not know yet, who may be looking for our type of content.
That's right.
So please leave a review. It really does help.
Yes, we need to know if there's something that you need to hear or need to see. We will be happy to oblige.
Yep. And I also forgot our contact information last episode. It's so funny when we just forget things.
Oh yeah, that's right. We were talking about it.
Hopefully I'll remember at the end of this again, so I'll say it there. So, but the photo shoot was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Before we get started, we were kind of talking about some other things, and I was, we were talking in the last episode about anything that we're obsessing over. I kind of always go to TV that I'm obsessing over. We've been watching a lot of Criminal Minds at the house.
Right on.
But a show I'm going back to that I've done before is The Americans.
Oh yeah.
Love The Americans.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I watched a little bit of it.
So I'm going back, and The Americans is great. It's set in the 80s. About a couple that are Russian KGB spies.
Yeah, they're embedded agents.
Yeah, who are portraying American citizens in the 80s. So it's very, very good. You can get it on Amazon Prime, all the episodes.
Very 80s too.
But I haven't really watched much new since before COVID started. Really, I mean, because I've gone back. I've watched. Old shows. I've watched Justified and White Collar, Burn Notice, Chuck, and now I'm on The Americans. I hardly ever watch new
stuff.
No.
I've been watching some new stuff like The Rookie, and of course the new Star Trek series, which have been coming out.
Oh yeah, I guess I watched Picard, so I guess there was that. The Rookie I haven't watched, which surprises me because I love Nathan Fillion.
Oh, it's really good. It's really good.
I guess I don't know. I miss Castle, and I wish that was still on the air. So, but I just don't watch much new anymore. It's like I'm watching all old shows all the time.
It's like your grandma always wanting to watch Gunsmoke and I Love Lucy.
I guess. So yeah. So that's my obsession right now is The Americans, and of course all the different true crime that I'm reading through. That I spent all day yesterday on a single subject that I actually can't wait to talk about.
Are we doing that today?
No. I'm not ready. I spent all day. Yeah. I spent all day yesterday, and I'm nowhere near ready. Yeah. On my research, I've still got much more to go. It's a wild ride.
Oh, I love wild rides.
And it's going to be a long one. Forewarning, when we get there, I'll warn everybody again. But
yeah, I can always make a shorter bit.
But we may have to on that one because
I've got subjects that are kind of short.
Sure.
Like the last one we did, Broken Lizard, wasn't very long. So,
yeah,
but it was fun. So.
It was fun. It was. So anyway, anything else obsessive on your end, or are you ready to get into the nerdery side of the show?
Okay, so the nerdery side of the show is going to run long today.
Okay.
I have a sneaking suspicion. So
all right.
Maybe you want to get into it. We can always talk about obsessions as well. This is about D&D or Dungeons and Dragons.
The initial role-playing game for most people.
It was the first one.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
Was it really the first?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I've got some of the history on it here. So
yeah, because I know a little bit of it. I just didn't know if there was anything before that.
They invented it. They were doing tabletop war games, and it grew out of that.
Okay.
So, and again, to start, I want to go ahead and run through some of the slang terms that we're going to be throwing around. Of course, you got the dungeon crawl, which is crawling through a dungeon. It can also be anything else. It doesn't have to be a dungeon. It could be a desert or anything else. But that's where you don't have a map to where you are. You have to kind of draw out your own map.
Right.
You've got Monty Hall, which is Haul Hall, is where you get a bunch of treasure.
We talked about in Shadowrun.
Yes. There's also a Monty Hall, Hall, where you get to pick door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. You've got big bads or boss monsters, the monster at the end of the session. Rule is written, or a raw, which is basically that. It's a rule is written. You've got house rules, rules of cool, which are rules developed by gaming groups that they use, and that's what they do. You've got railroading. That's when a DM takes choices away from the players. Campaign is a series of interconnected adventures. A one-shot is a single game session. Module is a pre-published adventure. An NPC is a non-player character. We've got a bodyguard run and a crit, which is a good dice roll on something. That's where you do so well that you actually
bad.
Yeah, there's also the reverse of that. And the other one that I forgot to mention, rat tracking. What rat tracking is when part of your party gets information and the other party starts to act as though they got the information as well, even though they weren't there at the time to get the information, and no one said, "Hey, I told them this." That is rat tracking. Not a good idea.
Well, it's funny as you go through this, so how to put this without sounding really weird. You and I are in sequential order.
Yes.
We're doing these in sequential order.
Yes.
So I'm sitting here going, yeah, I know. We covered this back in Shadowrun. We have all this.
Yes.
But the funny thing is, for our listeners, we might have some that do it random, that they don't stay in order.
That's why I want to throw these out here.
So that's really good. So I was just kind of snickering to myself, thinking, okay, we've heard this, this, but yeah, there may be people out there that they hit this episode before they hit Shadowrun. So no, good.
Yeah, that's why I'm doing it, running it through real quick.
Sure.
If they have, they could just miss it. And of course, you got the types of players. You got an agent of chaos who is an instigator or distractor, a taskmaster who keeps the game going, a note taker or stat person, a rules lawyer, and a peacekeeper. And of course, you got the character types. You've got the tank or the barbarian, a gun bunny or a fighter, an assassin or a rogue. You have a tech person, rigger, hacker, builder, artificer, weapons maker, or alchemist. You've also got a magic user or a scientist, a multi-user role that would be like a combat mage or a shaman, druid, ranger, or cleric, and then you've got a face, a bard, or a client contact.
Right.
Yeah, so I just want to get through that stuff because we may be throwing those around in this D&D episode.
I mean,
and also the Shadowrun, it may be 9 weeks before between that, because I think Shadowrun was episode 8. Was that right?
I'll go look here. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, off the top of my head. No, 8 was this, because 8 was the Smiths.
But
because I listen to that one a lot because I think it's funny.
Shadowrun's episode 12.
Okay. So more specifically, Dungeons and Dragons is played with polyhedral dice or dungeon dice. Rolled against tables to establish outcome. Dungeons and Dragons are commonly abbreviated as D&D, is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game originally designed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. It was first published in 1974 by Tactical Studies Rules, Inc. I did not realize it went as far back as 74. I was thinking it was like 76, 77.
Okay, so I was today years old when I found out what TSR stood for. That's funny.
Studies Rules. Yeah.
Did it always remain that, or did TSR become...
I think they just called it TSR.
Okay.
That. But yeah,
that's funny. I never knew.
Because it was developed out of a war game.
Right.
Bit. And they kind of always wanted to maintain you need to have little figures on the table to play with, which you don't have to.
No,
you don't have to. But a lot of people do.
It enhances the game some. I mean, if you're into it that much that you have a map that you're laying on a table and you have little figures that you can put on, that the only thing that does to me is that helps somebody with their imagination of what's going on.
Yeah.
I never needed that.
No.
With a good DM or a good GM that is describing what we're seeing, I can visualize it in my head, and I don't need something on the table. The only thing we used to use the whiteboards to kind of simulate approximately where on the battlefield you were.
Oh, hey, I need to move. Yeah, and we used little red X's. Or no, I'm sorry, blue X's.
Blue X's and red X's. Yeah. Red X's were bad.
Yeah, and blue X's were good. And it was like, okay, I need to move like 2 inches up the board that way to the right. Yeah, perfect. That's where I am.
Yeah, we always just estimate. We never had need for a map. I see the appeal of a table map, and I see the appeal of figures.
Yeah,
but I personally I never needed it.
No, me either. Again, it's nice to have. And I love the minis, but like there's this one company that designs basically big maps that are 3D for your minis, and they have little tops on them. And as you go into another room, you pull the top off and you see what's in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy that designs it, they did oh my God, like a documentary on that guy. He was, this stuff is beautiful.
Well, and you have the 3D map pieces too. To build up walls and castles and terrain, and there's so much that they can do to visually put stuff out on a board. But again,
yeah,
I need a table I can roll dice on.
Yeah.
I need my character sheet, and that's it.
Yeah, and a whiteboard just to kind of show. Well, and we didn't always use whiteboards either.
No, we didn't. Which I will say that it's been kind of cool over the last year as we've done Shadowrun on Roll20, because that's really the first time we were using maps like that and character placement and everything like that. And we were doing that simply because we were all remote. We still wanted to game, but we had to have something to do. So that was really kind of the first time we were using maps.
It's, it'd be like, hey, can I move from here to here? No, you can't move that far, but you could get like here.
Right.
And you would just kind of point to or somebody would point to a place on the whiteboard. And, in the case we draw like, okay, there are trees over here. They just make a big green circle. This is where the tree is.
Sure.
But yeah, it was pretty, we never really use the minis and stuff. I know a few people who have. They seem to really enjoy it. I just don't.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
No.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing that they use it. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying I'm some Billy badass stud and I don't need to have minis because I've got a great imagination. I'm just saying I never needed it.
No, me either.
I understand the appeal of having it.
Yeah. To me, it seems like it could get in the way after a while, especially if you have a really, really big party.
It would to me.
Yeah. But, maybe not. Maybe we should try it at some point.
Well, it's not really that much different than us putting a board game in front of us with all the pieces.
No, it is not.
No,
it is not. Yeah. And, we've probably got all the stuff to do it with, too. Yeah.
With the various board games I have, I could throw a D&D miniature set in front of us right now.
Right on.
Just say, this blue jet right here from Fortress America, that's the dragon.
Sorry, circling back. So it has been published by Wizards of the Coast, now a subsidiary of Hasbro since 1997.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The game was derived from miniature war games with a variation of the 1971 game Chainmail. So that's where D&D comes from. It was a strategy combat board game simulation called Chainmail, which had basically just a big book of rules, like a Starfleet Battles book. It was the initial rule system for D&D. It was commonly recognized as the beginning of modern role-playing games.
So, maybe I'm thinking of something else, but I'm going to ask. Was it called Chainmail because they did their turns by snail mail?
No. It was called Chainmail because it was knights.
There was a game that, I understand what Chainmail is. There was a game that literally that was the start of it, is they did it because they mailed the turns through snail mail.
Oh my God!
I'm going to have to look it up. I know there's a game out there that
one up. Yeah,
that was the origin. Okay, so it wasn't D&D. I need to go look it up. So anyway, sorry.
No. Chainmail was actually a
for the arbor. I didn't mean to sound stupid when I said that.
No. That actually, what you just brought up is fascinating. I didn't even think about that, dude.
I'm going to find what that game was.
Like the chess games where they would do it by mail. Oh my God, that must be.
I'm going to feel insanely stupid if that's what I'm thinking of, was an old chess game they did by mail.
Okay. Well, don't. I'm with you. So yeah, that's commonly recognized as the beginning of modern role playing. Now, Dungeons and Dragons' immediate predecessor was a set of medieval miniature rules written by Jeff Perrin for Chainmail, because it's like, okay, so we got knights, we got catapults, we got horsemen. I want to put a dragon in there. So he wrote these rules up, and Gary Gygax expanded on it, and started supplementing these fantasy characters in that game. And before the game was published as an update to Chainmail, Dave Wesley entered the Army in 1970. His friend and fellow Napoleonics wargamer Dave Arneson began a medieval variation of Wesley Bronstein's game, where players control individuals instead of armies. Arneson used the chainmail to resolve combat as play progressed. Arneson added such innovations as character classes, experience points, level advancement, armor classes, and other things. Now, I would like to talk about character classes and things like alignment, because I think non D&D players like Shadowrun players don't really get that because you do what you want to do.
Right.
But in D&D, and again, there are people out there who do not know this, you have to pick an alignment for your character.
Right.
You have to pick, are you going to be lawful good, chaotic evil, true neutral?
Well, and so go back to the 80s for a minute with D&D.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole D&D, oh God, the D&D scare was.
Oh, yeah.
And if you played a chaotic evil character, you were just from Satan and the pits of hell.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people didn't understand about D&D.
Yeah.
A chaotic evil character is not a satanic person, is not a demon worshiper.
No.
A chaotic evil person is someone who just does whatever they want because they want to.
Because they want to.
Can it be an evil person?
Of course
sure.
it can.
But it doesn't necessarily mean they're an evil person.
No.
They're just very selfish, and they do whatever the hell they want.
Yes.
Versus a lawful good who only does what is good and only does protection and never does things selflessly.
No.
Or selfishly, excuse me. Everything is selfless.
Yeah. It's the difference between Superman and Gordon Gekko. There you go. A chaotic evil person would be Gordon Gekko because he does whatever the hell he wants.
I would say the difference between Superman and Batman.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that Batman is necessarily chaotic evil. I think he's
chaotic good.
Chaotic good,
yeah,
maybe?
That makes sense. Yeah. He's trying to do what's right. But
yeah, Superman is lawful good, period. Period.
Yeah,
End of statement.
He is a Boy Scout. He is a paladin, as it were.
Yes, and whereas Batman will fracture a law to get things done.
Yeah.
He will step on the side of the criminal element to get things done to stop the big bad guy. So I just wanted that point in there that type of alignment doesn't necessarily mean an angelic character or a demonic character.
No.
It's how they behave in the world.
That's right. And if you pick a particular alignment and you play your character differently, your GM or DM can tell you you cannot have this alignment. You have to have this alignment because that's what you're playing.
Well, and some of the character classes, Paladin is a perfect example, is dependent on a alignment. A Paladin has to be lawful good. And if a Paladin breaks that, they can lose their special abilities.
Yes, they can.
And basically become a fighter at that point. They no longer have the ability to, cast their holy spells and everything like that because they have broken their vow, whatever it's going to be. So just wanted to bring those points.
Yes. Well, I mean, again, that's what I want to talk about. The character classes, things like that, because I realize that you and I know there are people out there that have no idea this is going on.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And I want to bring that to the masses. So
right. And so, I mean, just an overall recap, going back to the alignment of a character, that is the basis for how a particular character is going to act in the world, how they're going to behave in situations. That's what an alignment is.
Yes. Character classes, so different types of characters. Again, if you're playing Shadowrun or something like that, it isn't really a classification. You're just like, well, I think I'm going to be a fighter. I want to be a magic user, and then you can spiral off into 10 different directions from there. With character classes in D&D, you have to level up a certain way, and instead of getting points that you choose toward leveling, when you level up, it's there are prescribed things that happen.
Right.
Like you can't just raise your armor rating. You have to level up a certain way.
Sure.
So, that has been an argument about D&D, that it's a little too restrictive by a lot of people, but it's also a lot of fun. And it plays a little better because they have crunched a lot of the numbers for you already.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of them out there. Armor class, THAC0.
To hit armor class 0.
Thank you. Yeah, you have to, if you're going to hit somebody with a high THAC0, your hit, the damage has to be higher than their THAC0, otherwise you do nothing.
Right.
I don't think they use THAC0 anymore.
I don't think they even call it THAC0. I don't think.
Yeah,
they
it's something else. It's something else. I just don't call it THAC0 anymore.
Like I said, I had that brief time with 5th edition playing for my nephew.
How was that, by the way?
That was fun. He enjoyed it. They're still playing.
Oh, wow.
He's DMing it now.
Oh, nice.
He's getting his own stuff together. When Miranda was in town last week, they even talked about doing a session together at some point whenever she's back in town.
Right on.
But yeah, no, I don't remember seeing THAC0 specifically, but the one thing that did stand out, and I mentioned it in the Shadowrun episode, and I'll mention it again here, it says very specifically in the 5th edition book, as a DM, don't be a rules lawyer. No. Don't hold on to the rules.
Yeah.
Be adaptable.
Yeah.
And change things as you say fit. Now, granted, you're not going to change the core basis of the game.
No.
But you have to be able to have some wiggle room for the characters if you're going to have fun. The old D&D didn't put up with that at all.
No.
It was, this is the rules. These are how you have to follow.
Yeah.
And that's where you talk about.
It turned a lot of people off.
Restrictive.
Yeah, it turned a lot of people off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not your grandfather's D&D anymore. It's a lot more. It's a lot less restrictive. You can play some different types of characters like Dragonborn and stuff like that.
Oh my God, that's scary to think that there are people who have been playing D&D long enough that are grandparents.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, 1977, baby.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So, Arneson introduced Gygax to his Blackmore game. I think maybe Blackmore was the one they were doing by snail mail. That may be what you're thinking of. And they started developing a thing they called the fantasy game. That's what became Dungeons and Dragons. So the name was chosen by Gygax's 2-year-old daughter, Cindy, upon being presented with a number of choices of possible names. She exclaimed, "Oh, Daddy, I like Dungeons and Dragons best." And in the less prevalent versions of the story, give it credit to his wife, Mary Jo. Now, interesting side note. While he was working on this, he was going over to his friend's house, Dave Arneson's house, and they were going downstairs in the basement, and they were trying to work this out. At one point, his wife thought he was cheating on him and busts in, and there's 4 or 5 guys sitting around a table with dice in front of them. And that's when he brought her in to start brainstorming with them. Now, they take a lot of... they were influenced a lot by mythology, history, pulp fiction, and contemporary fantasy novels, especially J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Mm-hmm. The presence in the game of the halflings, which are what D&D refers to as hobbits because they got into trouble for using the word hobbit because it's copyright. Elves, half-elves, dwarves, orcs, rangers, and the like draw comparisons to these works. The resemblance was even close... was he a little bit closer? And then again, J.R.R. Tolkien's family was like, "You need to quit calling these things hobbits." So and ints, they couldn't use the word ints. Right. They went used treant. And I think Balrog was changed to Balor, but I think they finally relented and let them use some of that stuff. They still don't use hobbits; they use halflings.
Right. Which is funny because when you get to the 80s and somebody is talking about a hobbit that knows D&D, they will go, "Oh yeah, they're halflings."
Yeah, they're halflings.
No, they're hobbits.
They're hobbits. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, "Oh hey, I was watching this great movie called Lord of the Rings and it had these hobbits. They're halflings."
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's a D&D guy.
You go both ways, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember back in the day, I had a friend who was like, "Yeah, this is a great character. He's chaotic."
Chaotic.
Yeah, chaotic.
Oh.
It's those things when you learn a word by reading it, sometimes you mispronounce it.
That's true.
So Gygax said in an interview in 2000 that Tolkien's work had a strong impact because he played it down before that. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Also said the list of other influential authors was pretty long. Now, the D&D magic system, which wizards memorize spells, are used once a day and cast, must be rememorized, was heavily influenced by the Dying Earth stories by Jack Vance. So basically, I think it's you have to memorize these spells, and I think it's killing the planet. I think of those. It's been a while since I've read any of those. And again, we talk about law, neutrality, and chaos was derived from those novels as well. A troll described in the works by Poole Anderson influenced a lot of the monster creations. Robert E. Howard, Edgar Rice Burroughs, H.P. Lovecraft, Fritz Leiber, L. Sprague de Camp, Michael Moorcock. I can name lists of our authors all day that kind of inspired some of the monsters and some of the magic items they use. The original Dungeons & Dragons, now referred to as OD&D, was a small box set of 3 booklets published in 1974. That's the white box. That is, if you can find one of these things in mint condition, it's worth a fortune. And then they released Greyhawk and Blackmoor, the two, and then they started with a 2-prong strategy, which was D&D and AD&D. I don't think I ever played regular D&D. I think I always played AD&D.
So my first exposure to D&D would be in the 80s. And I knew there were people who played D&D.
Early 80s, 81, 82, somewhere around in there.
I think I was in middle school, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm with you. I'm trying to get the...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I knew of people who played D&D. I just didn't have any friends that played D&D. So I kind of felt on the outside of that. And plus, at the time, that was during a time where D&D was kind of cool.
Yes, it was.
And if you weren't part of that cool club, which, big shock, I wasn't, you didn't play D&D because you didn't have people that did. I was friends with nerds, but we didn't play D&D, but I wanted to.
Yeah.
So when I played D&D, what happened is they came out with the Red Box D&D set.
Red Box.
And this was in the heyday of the Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Yes.
And this was a solo D&D game where it had a campaign in there for you, and you basically did choose your own adventure, and you rolled the dice and everything like that. And so I got a game, and I learned the bare bones basics of D&D from that, but it was D&D.
I forgot that Redbox had a Choose Your Own Adventure in the back where you could play by yourself. That's right.
And I did.
Oh my God! Yeah, I was just about to talk about the Red Box.
I got the Red Box, and then I got the Blue Box, and there was one other because I got 3 different boxes, and each one, of course, expanded on the previous one and gave you more information and more rules and whatnot. So my first foray into role playing games was by myself.
How
much of a nerd am I? Just by myself.
You know what? To be honest, I the same way. I had gone to a garage sale, and I knew guys. So I remember about 1979, 1980, 1981. I was on the bus, and these guys were basically playing this. They're like, "You're too young for this. You're too young for this." And it's like, but I want to play it. It looks cool. It's got dragons and all sorts of other stuff. But those were the cool kids,
right? And that's so weird that they were cool.
It's just like Star Wars. Everybody was into Star Wars, and then it was nerdy.
Yeah, then it went away because we went older. So there were 2 sides of that. Not only was it a game that the cool kids played, but the other side of that is parents were concerned about it because it depicted demons and fire-breathing dragons and magic, and so there were a lot of people that were, like I said, it was the whole D&D is is Satan's work,
satanic panic.
It's going to cause people to do bad things, and
every one of those people I hear talking about cancel culture, these are the same people who were talking about the satanic panic. I don't want to hear it from you, hypocrite.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird looking back because, like I said, I do remember it was the cool people that played D&D, and I didn't have those cool people to play with. I didn't have friends that were into that kind of stuff.
Really?
I was still at that point in my life. I was still playing with my Star Wars action figures.
Yes.
You know, I'd build forts in my room.
Yes.
And these elaborate battle scenes, you know, in my room with all the vehicles. And you got to remember, back then, we go back that far. I was also an only child back then.
Yeah.
Because it was just me. Kyle wasn't born until 84.
Oh wow, and you were quite a bit. You're quite a bit older than Kyle too. Like,
yeah, I'm almost 13 years older.
Oh wow, okay.
And that same year that Kyle was born was when I got Joey and Miss, and then of course, you know, this past year I got Shelly. So, you know, I spent a lot of time alone as a kid. I had friends that I went out and hung out with, but this was stuff that I did by myself in my room. I had my action figures, and then I had my solo D&D.
Yeah.
And it was, you know.
Yeah, I went to a garage sale, and these people were moving. This guy was the local Amiga salesman in the area.
Okay.
So, and he got
Amiga.
Yeah, he got promoted. He was going to move to another region, and so they had to clear everything out. And he's like, "Hey, you liked all this stuff?" Yeah, because he taught me about Amigas, which is how I learned about them, and gave me some fantasy books. And basically, I went to look at the D&D, and he had like a quarter on each one of the books. And I mean, like, he had the basic rule book and a whole bunch of modules and a whole bunch of other stuff in 2 milk crates, just full. And this was AD&D second edition. And it was a ton of it. And it was like a quarter a piece. And I'm trying to get my money together. And he was like, "What do you got there?" I'm like, "I got like $1.50. But there was, 2 milk crates full of books. So whatever that is, 20, 30 bucks. And he's like, "Give me the $1. Have them in good health, but you got to promise me you're going to read them before you play them." And I read them and had them. I think I finally took them down and traded them in on newer stuff when we were finally playing in the 90s.
Really?
Yeah, that's how I got, like, I went into Half Price Books to trade them in for some Shadowrun stuff I saw in there.
So one of the things I always loved is we could find source books for Shadowrun at half price.
Yeah.
We could always find good stuff. And I mean, you could still do that through D&D.
You could buy the stuff new, but it was always hit half price first.
Have I ever taken you to the Opera House in Denton?
Why, yes. As a matter
I
of fact,
couldn't remember
have.
if we did or not, because that's...
Yeah, I was salivating on bookshelves. I feel really bad.
And they have a whole role-playing section in the basement.
Yes, they do.
So... yeah, that's the cool. I'm going to hate when stores like that go away, because they are. Yeah. But especially that one, because I think that is just a really, really cool place. You know, anybody who's here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, do yourself a favor. Go into Denton. Go to the square. And on the northeast corner of the square is a building that says Opera House on it.
It is a bookstore.
It's a used bookstore. And
it's massive.
It's also magical.
Yes.
It's just magical.
The smell alone.
Oh, gosh, yes.
It's got, and go downstairs and thumb through the albums while you're there, because they got those also downstairs.
That's on the first floor.
Is that on the first floor?
Yeah, the album, because when you walk in, go off to your right, you go down a little ramp.
Maybe that's what I was thinking.
And there's all the albums and the I think even cassettes, and that's where the DVDs. That's where your science fiction paperbacks are all back there.
Yes.
And then if you go downstairs, that's where you'll find hobbies and games and RPGs.
Yeah, and there's shelves and shelves.
Oh yeah.
And they're shelves, and they've got more shelves of RPG games than a comic book shop or a used bookstore. Yeah. Unless you're going to someplace like what's that one over here? Madness? Yeah, Madness is huge. I've never seen anything like Madness before.
Oh, Madness Comics. Yeah, that's the comic book shop over in Plano.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's
Plano,
the size of a small grocery store.
Yeah.
And it's a comic book shop, game shop, and everything like that. But if you're a fan of used books, of like half price books, and you're here in the Metroplex, go to Denton. Go into the Opera House and just have a ball.
Give yourself some time, because you're going to want it.
Yeah.
You're going to want it, because you're going to go in there and go, I have to go look at everything.
Yeah. So, D&D.
D&D. Circling back, as we do.
We will.
So yeah, two-pronged strategy was created in early 77 where they had D&D and AD&D. So Dungeons and Dragons and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And they had, it's basically the same rule set, but they finagled with the rules a little bit. So AD&D you could do things in AD&D that you couldn't do in D&D and vice versa.
Right.
But D&D regular was supposed to be a little easier to learn. Yeah,
right.
AD&D was supposed to be a little more complex, and that stands for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, because if I remember right, D&D just had lawful characters, neutral characters, chaotic characters.
Yeah.
AD&D brought in the multi-alignments with lawful good, lawful neutral, chaotic good, blah, 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 blah.
Yes. They were also, this is when they started stocking these things in toy stores. Later in 77, the first part of the AD&D was published, which brought together the various publishing rules, options, and corrections, then expanded them into a definitive unified game for hobbyists and gamers. TSR marketed them as an introductory game for new players, which is what you would say, yeah, if you're going to do this, do the D&D. But then in 1989, you got AD&D second edition. Now, when we were playing, I think that's mostly what everybody played back in the day.
I think so.
AD&D second, and eventually the D&D went away.
Right.
Yeah, everything was AD&D second edition, and they eventually just dropped the AD&D D&D part when they came out with the third edition in 2000.
Yeah.
But yeah, for a long time, everything was AD&D second edition, and then you had different worlds. You had, of course, you had the Blackmoor and the Greyhawk. But you also had Spelljammer, and you had Dark Sun. Dark Sun was so good. What was the? Oh my God, I don't have it down here. What was the one that took place in the East?
In the East,
yeah, it was like the Middle East and in Asia. I know Don had this. And they didn't produce this stuff for very long.
I know. I don't remember.
And then you had Forgotten Realms, of course.
Forgotten Realms.
That's what most people played in. That I know. You Dragonlance.
I don't remember. I really don't. I remember Dragonlance.
Planescape, some other really, really great stuff. But yeah, I can't remember. Toa?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Forgotten Realms. Forgotten Realms was the one that I remember. That's what most people played was Forgotten Realms.
Right. With a little bit of Dragonlance and Spelljammer thrown in. Like we were playing Forgotten Realms when we played, and I played a Kinder. Well, a Kinder is not from Forgotten Realms. No. A Kinder is from Dragonlance. Yeah. So I concocted a story on how he fell asleep on a spacefaring ship and ended up in the wrong place.
Right.
Because he was awesome. Barndall Broadshire.
The Kinder. So a Kinder is a type of halfling or hobbit. They're a little thinner built and they're a little bit taller. They're like very small elves, but they are always true neutral. They're a very, very kind people, but they're kleptomaniacs. Yes, and they're extremely curious about everything.
Yes, and if it's shiny, they will put it in their pocket and walk away. They don't see that as wrong.
Right.
However, they also do not possess fear.
Correct.
There is no fear for a Kinder.
Right.
And that is so much fun to play.
Well, and that's where, because that was the whole campaign where we brought Primus from Shadowrun into D&D.
Yes.
And we had the whole story that the way Primus wound his way up there is in a drunken stupor. Mm-hmm. He wandered into a cave, fell asleep, and he fell into a dimensional portal, which took him to Forgotten Realms. Uh-huh. And it ripped out all of his cyberware when he went through the portal. But he gained some of the abilities of a troll, one of which was regeneration.
Yes. And
where he once had cyberware, his bones grew in its place. Mm-hmm. And so he was blind because his cyber eyes were gone. Uh-huh. His bone spurs, everything like that. And Barndall found Primus in the cave.
Yes.
And basically nursed him back to health, this big, hulking, nasty-smelling troll, because he had no fear and he was fascinated by this creature.
Yes.
And
look, it can talk.
Yes, and they became friends.
Yes.
And typically, Barndall would ride into town on Primus's shoulders. Mm-hmm.
And they would often have to tie Barndoll to Primus to keep him from wandering off.
And stealing things.
Stealing things. So yeah, that was a fun duo to play. That was you and I again playing Agents of Chaos.
Yes, very much so.
Right.
Agents of Chaos. Well, and I played the Kinder as a thief because that's the best thing to play them as.
Sure.
Because they have an innate ability of stealing things because that's what they do.
Right.
That's their entire society is built around it. Again, they don't see it as wrong because they think everything belongs to everybody.
Right.
Collective ownership. Sorry. Circling back. So in 2000, we had the 3rd edition. In 2003, we had 3.5, which is basically just a tightening up of 3rd edition. In 2008, we had 4th edition. And then in 2014, we've got 5th edition, which is what you were playing with your nephews and stuff. That is basically
that's
for my notes.
That's
now
the edition now.
Yes, that is the current edition.
Yeah.
That is basically it for my notes. Now we can just talk about Dungeons & Dragons.
I think we have all this time.
Oh, have we? Okay, all right
kind
then.
of as we've gone along.
Yeah.
Because really, I think you've played D&D a lot more than I have. I played the campaign with Primus, and then I played very briefly Torian Duskwalker, my elf, in a campaign, but I didn't play that for long. D&D is still my love, and that's my home, and that's where I want to stay at. So you've definitely played D&D a lot more than I have.
Well, and recently too, because we were playing a D&D campaign with my neighbor Johnny. Well, I think you played at least 1 or 2 sessions with.
Hit the mic,
but that
twice.
was one. That was where we had a group of. Good Lord,
it's too many people.
It was too many people.
I couldn't get him. It was too chaotic.
Now,
I couldn't do it. That's why I left that group.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
When we finally got it whittled down where there was just, like 6 people, that game played for great. And we played it for about 2 years.
Yeah.
Because we went from 1st edition characters to 7th edition first level characters to 7th level.
It just I hate playing a first level character. I hate it. I hate it. Every time that the few times I've gotten into D&D, we always start with a minimum of a third level
character. Yeah, a lot of people do that.
Yeah, that way they've got a little bit. They've done a little bit. They're not going to get killed by a rat.
Yes, because a magic user, first level magic user, can be killed by a rat.
Yes,
not a magic rat. Not a special type of D&D super rat, not an ROUS, rodents of you. A regular workaday old rat can kill a magic user in Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition.
And without a whole lot of effort.
Yeah.
I mean, they're weak. And that's why I've never understood. I mean, okay, I understand you do the first level character, so you're familiar with that character from the ground up.
Yeah.
But I think there's probably a better way to do that.
I heard a story where someone had rolled up a magic user in 1st level D&D, and they were walking through the forest, and the guy kept tripping over because they had real high roots coming up out of the ground, and the guy kept tripping, and he was a gnome, so he kept tripping over the forest roots, and it killed him. Yeah. I've heard the same
type of story on that kind of thing. So I've never understood the first level character. Why you start there? Start them a little bit higher.
Yeah.
I would honestly think that you would want to start somebody a little bit higher, somebody that maybe they've done a little bit of adventuring, even if it's just in their local woods outside. So. Ultima Online that I played for a long time, which is very D&D-esque.
Yes.
When you started out, you spent a lot of time in the woods outside of the town you start in, killing rats. Killing rats, birds, chickens, all kinds of stuff, because they're most likely not going to kill you. But then, you start getting a little bit farther out in the woods, and then suddenly troll, and you're like, and you got to run.
Yeah.
Run away, because
you can't take on a troll if you're
not at that level.
No.
You've got to get up. I mean, later on in the game, oh God, a troll is nothing at all. And that's kind of how I see it with the D&D characters as well. On that first level, it's just
kobolds are tough to kill, and kobolds are
good first level.
Yeah.
creatures.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the boys, when I did the D&D, they all had first level characters, and so it was kobolds, and I think I had some goblins in there. I had some, and then I threw a beholder in there. With no intention at all of that beholder attacking them.
Yeah.
That's...
I played a campaign like that. I was like, we just started talking to the beholder, and the beholder's like, so we started asking it questions. I was placed here for 1,000,000 years to guard this sword. What about everything else in this room? Oh, I could care less.
That's the beholder I put in this campaign.
I love that dude.
It was that beholder that was just there to guard one thing.
Yeah.
Could care less about anything else.
My job is to guard this sword and this sword alone. Well, what if I take that sword? You'll have to tangle with me. What if I take everything else? I could care less.
Well, the boys didn't even get that far. They saw the beholder and they ran. I was going to allow them to take stuff and whatnot. But yeah, so I would just always advocate, start them off at level 3.
Yeah, start them off at level 3.
Yeah,
no, I get you.
Build them up a little bit.
Understandable. But yeah, we took those characters from level 1 to level 7. So yeah, we played 2 or 3 years. It was a lot of fun. Sure. I enjoyed it. We were playing 3/3.5 because that's the books we had. I could pick up and play that character too. I played a ranger named Crow. He was an elf named Crow.
I'm with you.
Okay,
I caught you.
Okay, I'm just curious if anybody else caught me.
He's making reference to a movie.
Yes.
There's a movie called Hawk the Slayer.
Yes.
Which is a terribly cheesy movie, but I love that movie.
Yes.
And in it, there's an elf named Crow.
Who wears penny loafers.
And is so incredibly, amazingly, impossibly fast with a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a machine gun bow and arrow.
Yeah, basically they filmed him taking it out and pulling it like this, and they just sped it up.
Yeah, they put it in like 10 speeds.
Yeah.
You need to watch Hawk the Slayer.
Yeah.
Just to see the cheesy.
Do you know, the acting is not terrible.
Really? What Hawk the Slayer were you watching? Jack Palance. Oh,
Jack Palance is a little over the top in that movie.
Yes, that's cringeworthy, Jack Palance in that. But I loved Hawk the Slayer. I loved the music, and I loved the idea of the story. That's why I own it on DVD, man. DVD, that's that thing, where
round spins.
Yeah,
got a hole in the middle of it.
It's circular.
Yeah.
So, and Hawk the Slayer, that's another fantasy base. It's a D&D because you've got your magic, you've got your ranger, because Hawk was a ranger, really. And then you had your giant, the barbarian. Then you had the
dwarf,
the dwarf
who was a thief.
Crow, the elf, the archer. You had the
sorceress,
with the crossbow. Yeah. You had the sorceress.
Yeah.
You had Crow. My character for that group, had I stayed on, I would have had a lot of fun with, because that was Torian Duskwalker, and that was the one who had a hawk as a familiar.
Yeah,
and I had the ability to cast spells through the hawk.
That was pretty cool.
I mean, so I could stay completely off the battlefield and have the hawk fly overhead and do all the work. Just had to be careful because it was familiar. Don't want your familiar to die.
No, that would be bad.
That's bad.
That would be bad.
So that would have been a fun character to play. It was too many people for me to hang with it, because it was too chaotic. It was too hard to play because there's just too many people.
There's too many people. Yeah.
It takes too long to get through a battle scene when you're talking about 10 people and each one of them have an action that has to go. It's just
and then you got to do another round. Yeah, it's too many people.
As we talked about in the Shadowrun episode. I think 6 is really kind of your maximum.
Yeah, I agree.
To have fun.
Yeah. Otherwise, it gets tedious.
It does.
And you don't want it to be tedious. It's supposed to be enjoyable.
Right. And when there were 10 people involved, it wasn't fun. It was too much. I don't need to leave a gaming session feeling stressed out.
Yeah.
I need to leave a gaming session going, man, that was pretty cool. I can't wait till next
I really enjoyed that. I have lost all my stress. I got to be an agent of chaos for 3 hours.
Right. Not go home going, God, and that's how I end the whole way home. If you could understand any of that.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I'm with you.
So yeah, D&D is fun. I've enjoyed it over the years. It's not Shadowrun to me. Shadowrun is always going to be my favorite.
You and I think of Shadowrun as role playing games, and D&D second.
That's the first one I think of.
I'm with you. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's about it. I think we've kind of covered Dungeons and Dragons and with some information and some crosstalk. I kind of liked it. Enjoyed it. Thank you, sir.
Outstanding. Well, then, with that, we can move over to the murder side of the house.
Murder.
So, for my side of the podcast today, it's got a D&D tie-in.
Hey!
Which I told you we would do that.
Thank you.
And this is the story of Rod Ferrell.
Rod Ferrell?
Rod Ferrell. So I got my information a lot of places. Oxygen.com, Parcast Cults, the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, Wikipedia, off Reddit, a website called Beargrass Thunder, the Orlando Sentinel, the Tampa Bay Times, and a video, Occult Crimes, Season 1, Episode 5. And this is, again, the story of Rod Ferrell and the Vampire Gang.
Were they playing the vampire game?
Huh?
Were they playing the vampire game?
Yes. As well as D&D. So that's what I said. We had a tie-in here with them. So Rod Justin Ferrell was born in Murray, Kentucky.
Okay.
On March 28th, 3 days after my birthday.
Yes.
But 1980, to two teenagers.
Oh, no.
Yeah, his mom's name was Sandra, although some sites said it was Sandra. Gibson was her last name. And I'm going to start it the way I originally had it, and a father. Okay? So.
Okay.
I have to toot my own horn on this.
Okay. Because
for the longest time on all of these websites, all I found, and I hit my mic again. I keep doing that today. This is too close to me today. Every site I found, when it talked about his mother, it talked about his mother, Sandra, and father. Father was not a big part of his life, blah, blah, blah. But what was bothering me is I couldn't find his name.
Okay.
That was bugging me.
Yeah.
So after site check, I got a revelation. I had his name.
Yep.
I have his birthday. I have his mother's name.
Yep.
I went to Ancestry.com and found his father.
Okay.
I thought that was great. Sure enough, because I found Sandra's marriage certificate to Rick A. Ferrell. So, yeah, I couldn't find any information about him anywhere.
So this guy disappeared pretty early on.
Well, I'm wondering if because of the string of the events, because he was an absentee father as it was.
Yeah.
I saw some sites where that said once he was gone, he was never a part. I saw other sites that said he was partly responsible for introducing Rod to D&D.
Okay.
It varied. All I could find is Rick and Sandra were married on April 9th, 1980. Rod was born on March 28th, 1980. So this was a shotgun wedding.
Well, okay, so they were married after he was born? Wow, okay.
And so according to their marriage records, they were both 17 at the time Rod was born.
Yeah.
I did read that Rod was born with his umbilical cord wrapped around his neck.
Okay.
Which cut off his oxygen.
Okay.
So there's some theories that may have been some of the problems with his brain later on.
The traumatic effect was
maybe
in utero. Okay.
I also read that he was diagnosed with severe encephalitis, which caused seizures. And both of these could have caused brain trauma. Which really could have been the cause of his life's choices.
Right on.
Just some theories that were out there.
Yes, not D&D.
Not D&D, right. Wanted to put out there. His father joined the military soon after Rod's birth and then filed for divorce.
Okay.
So, like I said, One of the sites said his father was never part of his life and he was raised solely by his mother. Others, like I'd said earlier, said he spent a little time with Rod as a kid. Mm-hmm. One site did say that Rod's father introduced him to D&D, while another said it was his mother. So it's kind of which one is correct. I really don't know. I do know that Rick Ferrell was not listed on Rod's birth certificate. That was one of the reasons it was so hard to find him.
Okay. Well, yeah, because they weren't married when he was born. They were married like 8 days after.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So Rod and Sandra lived with her parents off and on over the years. Mm-hmm. Rod did claim that he was raped by his maternal grandfather at age 5.
Oh.
He claimed that his grandfather and others would sexually abuse him during cult-type rituals with the cult Black Mask. And the rituals included sodomy, sadism, masochism, torn tissues, cuts, burns, and performed animal sacrifices. And the goal of this cult was to release evil into the world and extinguish light.
Okay. Well, yeah, torturing a 5-year-old will do that.
Yeah. Again, if you don't want a serial killer or a murderer, don't beat your kids. That may have to be on a shirt somewhere.
We need to put that on a shirt. If you don't want to raise a serial killer,
I don't know that
don't beat your kids.
I don't know that I could actually get behind a shirt that actually says that.
If you don't want serial killers in the world, don't beat your kids. I still think that's I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's a public service message, sir.
Maybe. Well, there were no criminal charges ever filed against his grandfather. And Sandra's parents would continually tell Sandra she was a bad mother in front of Rod. So this was not good. This was not a good home environment for Rod. Why?
She's 17. Of course she's going to have trouble as a parent.
Well, they said it, at this time he was at least 5. So now she's
18, 19,
22, 23. I can't do math.
Yeah.
Still,
that's
not good.
Pretty young to have kids.
When they weren't living with their parents, Sandra and Rod stayed in public housing, while Sandra worked as an exotic dancer and occasionally a sex worker.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah. And in an interview with the Orlando Sentinel later, she did admit that she dabbled in vampirism. Vampirism. Rod would follow suit. Mm-hmm. Rod and Sandra bonded over vampires and the macabre. This is where I found that his mother introduced him to other fantasy RPGs. Some said D&D, but she introduced him to Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, right on. No, that makes sense.
She also taught him to read tarot cards. And Rod soon began to believe himself a vampire. He started dressing the dark colors and looking all grim and emo and everything like that.
Yeah.
He did in his teenage years begin self-mutilation, cutting and the like.
Yeah, that's probably a reaction to some other stuff going on.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
He exhibited signs of depression and even talked about committing suicide. He was very open about that.
Okay.
Soon in his teenage life, he really kind of fell in love with other teenagers who professed to be living the vampire lifestyle.
Right on.
They drank each other's blood. They wore all black and listened to goth and industrial music.
Oh, yeah, as you do.
Rod would soon meet Stephen Jaden Murphy, who claimed that he sired Rod. That he crossed Rod over into an actual vampire through a blood drinking ritual. The video I saw, they were very dramatic, and he arrived at the graveyard. And
was this like the Saturday Night Live sketch with Molly Shannon and oh god, what's his name? The goth.
Oh, I can't remember his name. I remember
Romano.
what you're talking about. Corky Romano. God, I loved him.
Oh, he was in Monkey Bone. He was, oh my God, what is that guy's name? Chris Kattan.
Chris Kattan.
Chris Kattan and Molly Shannon did this Oh my God! It was the goth night.
Yeah,
he always worked at Cinnabon.
the goth show that they had. It was their version of Wayne's World, but as goth. Because they had the TV show.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
I'm kind of seeing this in my head.
It wasn't quite like that, but it was the video I watched was very overly dramatic. It wasn't the best video in the world, but it kind of gave me some other points to look at. But this part was very dramatic. That arrived at the graveyard to go into his ritual to cross over. It was very over the top.
And I guess part of the ritual was to hit play on the CD player so you can listen to Bela Lugosi's Dead by the Bauhaus.
No, I think it was a little bit more serious than that when they actually did it.
All right, okay, I'm with you.
So Stephen or Jaden
is dead.
Stephen or Jaden was really more of a Satanist, but he encouraged the vampire lifestyle for Rod, and actively engaged in Vampire the Masquerade with Rod frequently. Yeah. So really encouraged the behavior and encouraged the lifestyle. Sandra, meanwhile, was sending very lurid letters to Stephen's 14-year-old brother.
Okay. Whoa. What?
Shall I read one?
Wait. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my noodle around this. So, Stephen is the kid we're talking about?
Stephen is the guy who sired Rod into vampirism.
Okay. So Rod's friend Stephen, the Rod's mother,
Sandra,
is sending letters to
Stephen's
younger brother,
14-year-old brother.
Younger brother.
Yes.
Okay, I'm with you. Please continue.
No problem.
Just had to get that straight.
I do have one of these letters.
Okay, let me hear it.
It says, I long to be near you, to become a vampire, a part of the family immortal and truly yours forever. You will then come for me and cross me over, and I will be your bride for eternity, and you my sire.
That kid banged that dude's mom.
She would eventually be charged with solicitation to commit rape.
Yeah, that kid banged that dude's mom.
Yeah, I would think so. So Sandra and Rod would move back and forth between Murray, Kentucky, and Eustis, Florida, which is where her parents were.
Okay.
As her parents had moved to Eustis, Florida in 1990. So she would move back and forth. It was in Eustis where Rod became friends with Heather Wendorf, who was described as a troubled Eustis high school sophomore who rebelled against her parents over cleaning a room and other trivial matters. Things the kids will be upset about.
I don't want to clean my room.
Right. When Rod would go back to Kentucky, he'd call Heather collect, running up several $100s in phone bills.
Yeah,
and eventually Heather's parents cut him off. Said, "No, no more. You can't. You don't do the collect. Blah blah blah."
Yeah,
and this apparently made Heather very very angry and even more rebellious.
Right on.
Back in Murray, Rod was now telling people he was a 500-year-old vampire named Visago, and began recruiting followers.
Visago? That's from something.
It is. The sign of the if I recall correctly, the sign of Visago is a death metal band. I think I'd have to go look it up. But
I know I've heard that name.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, and again I could be thinking of something completely different. But I think Visago is like one of the prince demons of hell or something like that.
All right. I'm with you.
I don't know.
Visago, a 500-year-old vampire.
That was yes. That's what Rod was saying at this point.
Not the son of a 17-year-old girl and a father who...
Well, she's not 17 anymore. He's now a teenager. So
but yeah.
Yeah. So he was looking for young lost souls. Okay, this is where again we talk about a cult leader. They're very charismatic. He knew how to talk to people. He knew how to find people who were lost. He knew how to find people that were depressed, and he knew how to tell them, "Come follow me, and I'll give you meaning in your life. Come follow me, and I will give you immortality." Because he's...
this is about to take a bad turn, and I feel really bad for this kid right now.
He would get expelled from school multiple times.
Okay.
One time he even threatened a teacher that he would slit the teacher's throat.
Okay.
This was not a great kid. Police do believe at one time there were up to 30 members of this vampire cult.
Okay.
So he had a pretty good little following.
Nice little nest.
We've humored William somewhere in here. All right, we'll let him go. One of these followers was 16-year-old Howard Scott Anderson. Scott came from extreme poverty. He had an alcoholic father who abused his mother, and Scott ended up becoming Rod's right-hand man. So he was he was his henchman, that he went to. Some of the other followers were Rod's 16-year-old girlfriend Charity Kesey and 19-year-old Dana Cooper. And they said that the group really took comfort in being able to belong to a group of outsiders that had like-minded people in a place that was very unaccepting of them. Didn't accept the way they behaved, the way they looked, the way they talked, the way they dressed. And so they really bonded together that they had a common outlook on life.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, with some of these alty indie gothy kids, they're all that way, man. They're just looking for a group to belong to be with, and if you isolate them, if you as a society isolate them worse than they already are, you're just making things worse for you and them.
Sure. Well, something I found that I had in here because it was really, really interesting on the Reddit subreddit. That I read about this. There was a woman on there who claimed to have been one of his followers. This was really interesting to read.
Wow.
People were asking her questions, and she was responding back. When asked how she was convinced to follow Rod, she stated, "I was young, stupid, and lonely. Rod was charismatic, and his clan was welcoming to someone like me. Sometimes it's a matter of wanting to believe in something, of wanting to fit in somewhere."
Yeah. No, I am right there with you right now. I'm right there with this kid. I get it.
Sure.
There for the grace of God, go I.
She said that Rod had a way of seeking out the loners and the outcasts, like I said. She claimed that they would sometimes cut themselves and milk the blood into a glass, but in most cases they would cut themselves and let the other person drink directly from the wound.
Yeah.
Well, they're vampires. I mean, that's the life they're living here.
Yeah.
Rod told them that after they had crossed over, that they had more sway over mortals and that they were more charismatic and cunning. So really buying into the whole vampire mystique. Yeah. Supposedly that was as far as their abilities went, but Scott insisted he'd become stronger.
Okay. Physically stronger?
Okay. She said that they would often hang out at Rod's house, take a lot of drugs, drink each other's blood, and played a lot of Vampire the Masquerade. More RPGing there.
Yeah.
They also had a meeting spot called the Vampire Hotel, which was a dilapidated structure in the middle of the woods near Kentucky Lake.
Yeah, that's probably where they got up to some shenanigans too.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, she said that they threw parties, used psychedelic drugs, and took part in various rituals. They would occasionally rob or vandalize a place, and it was extraordinarily rare to go longer than 3 days without exchanging blood. She said they would start to feel weak if they went for too long without consuming blood.
Okay.
And she also said that Rod's biggest aspiration in life was to become immortal through fame and hope to achieve that fame through murder.
Wow.
Yeah. This was terrible. In October 1996, Rod and another broke into the Murray-Callaway County Animal Shelter and gruesomely killed 2 puppies by stomping one to death and pulling the legs off another. I know that's gruesome. I know it's sick. I'm just trying to paint a picture of where this kid was.
Yeah.
According to the Reddit thread,
somebody had saved him before that.
Yeah.
Because he may have been able to turn back before that.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, once you start killing puppies and stuff, you're.
Well, and I know this oversimplifies it, but maybe someone just gave the kid a hug.
Yeah.
Said, I love you. You matter.
Or talk to him and tell him he mattered.
Yeah.
I
think that's a lot of it. Tell them that you matter.
Yeah.
You matter in this world. You matter in life. You matter to me.
Yeah.
I think that's where you could really save a lot of people that are having a lot of emotional, depressing problems.
Yeah.
Just let them know they matter.
Yeah, I mean, getting them out of a poverty would probably also help. But yeah, tell them that you love them.
Sure. Yeah.
That they're worth something.
Yeah.
That their ideas have value before they go off onto the deep end.
In November 96, Rod, Charity, Scott, and Dana drove from Murray, Kentucky to Eustis to go pick up Heather. Remember, she was back in
that's right,
Florida. Yeah. Rod rallied the group together, telling them they had to go on a rescue mission to save Heather from her parents.
Okay.
So Rod was telling them that Heather told Rod, and then Rod told everybody else, that her parents were abusing her. And she wanted to run away from home.
Okay.
Heather described her home life as hell. She said she wanted her parents dead, and she thought Rod would save her from that life.
Yeah.
Rod had told them all they would move to New Orleans and live together as a vampire family.
Right on. Because, New Orleans, that's where that stuff happens.
Right.
Because of Anne Rice.
On November 25th, 1996, when they met up with Heather down in Florida, Heather said she crossed over to become a vampire by drinking Rod's blood in a ritual.
Yeah, right on.
And then that night, Rod took a quote-unquote significant amount of LSD and went to Heather's house with Scott because they were going to steal the family car for the trip to New Orleans.
A significant amount of LSD?
That's what it said. A significant amount.
That sounds like a lot.
I would expect so. The car that they had driven down had broken down, so they needed a new car. So they're going to steal Heather's parents' car. Heather made them a deal, said that she would use her keys to unlock the garage so that the car could be stolen. They could complete the trip.
Yeah.
And Heather told Rod, I don't want you messing with my parents. Just leave them alone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just get this car out of here and
then we'll book. So Rod and Scott entered Heather's house through the garage, and Rod armed himself with a crowbar. They found Heather's father, 49-year-old Richard Wendorf, asleep on the couch, and Rod began beating him to death with the crowbar. Bludgeoned him to death.
Yeah, with a crowbar.
Richard had a fractured skull and ribs, and they said he was almost instantly knocked out before being killed.
Yeah. So incapacitated. They just kept hitting him anyway.
He suffered more than 22 blows to the face. The video that I saw said that his head was actually shattered.
Oh my.
Yup. Heather's mom.
You're right there, Will.
Heather's mom, Naoma Rush Queen, was showering in another part of the house, and she came out to get herself a cup of coffee, and then she encountered Rod in the kitchen. And she had a scalding hot cup of coffee, and she threw it on Rod, which then pissed him off.
Well, yeah.
And so Rod now attacked her
with the crowbar.
Hit her with the crowbar so hard it severed her brainstem, killing her instantly.
That's hard.
Yeah. He originally claimed that he was going to allow her to live, but the hot coffee pissed him off, and so he changed his mind.
Yeah.
Later in his confession, he actually stated, by that time, it was pretty obvious. I had blood on my hand, and a crowbar in my hand. I think I wrote that wrong, but he had blood on his hands and a crowbar in his hands. I was fixing to say, yeah, I want to have coffee with you, son of a bitch, smartass. But anyway, that's when she lunged at me. I just took the bottom of the crowbar and kept stabbing it through her skull. And whenever she fell down, I just continually beat her until I saw her brains falling on the floor, because that pissed me off. Yeah. Both mom and dad were then given ritualistic burns, with Scott's sign of Visago on them. They danced around their bodies, and then Rod and Scott searched the house for valuables. leaving after stealing a credit card, some jewelry, and the family's blue Ford Explorer.
Okay. This is 96, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm with you.
The burn marks were in the shape of a V, by the way, which was his symbol, and then they were accompanied by a dot for every member he considered to be in his cult.
Okay.
So that was his little symbol. Heather's 17-year-old sister, Jennifer, discovered the murders when she returned home from work that night.
Oh.
Yeah. How awful is that? Heather, though, wouldn't know about the murders until after the clan had already left town. Rod didn't tell them.
So Heather wasn't there at the time.
It's just Rod and Scott.
So they went and picked her up someplace else, presumably.
Mm-hmm. And then left them behind somewhere while they went to the house to get the car.
Yeah.
Yep. They said that the murders were hidden from Heather, and then Rod surprised her with the story and gifted Heather her mother's jewelry that he and Scott had stolen.
Right on.
On November 27th, murder warrants were issued for all 5 teens.
I'll bet.
Mm-hmm. 4 days later, on November 28th, police caught up with them in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Charity called her mother in South Dakota asking her for money. And her mother had already heard what had happened.
Of course.
I saw somewhere, and I forgot to write it down, I think her grandmother worked in law enforcement somewhere, worked for a deputy's office or something.
Dummy!
Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I'm almost positive I saw that.
I got to call my mom and get some money. You know?
Grandma.
Yeah, grandma, yeah.
So, Charity's mom was pretty smart. She told Charity, she said, you know what? Let's go to whatever. And they went to a Howard Johnson's, I think it was.
Yeah.
And she called there and told the clerk, hey, the police are coming for these kids. Give them a room. Here's my credit card.
Yeah.
Make sure they're fed. Give them whatever they need. Yeah. Just keep them there.
Keep them there. Keep them about it. And of course, they're on the run. It's like, oh, hey, my mom's getting us a hotel room. All right. We can go have fun. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, we're going to eat. Yay.
Dumbasses.
Yeah. Right.
So of course, the police did show up and arrested them at the hotel. Rod continued playing the role of vampire even after arrested. He claimed he was being framed by a rival group of vampires. And he also claimed he had multiple personalities and was trying to ditch being a vampire. Every time they photographed him, he'd stick out his tongue or sarcastically say, God bless America. What the media said is that it looked like he was putting on a show for the cameras and that he was trying to act like Charlie Manson.
Yeah. He was trying to get out of it by looking crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On February 5th, 1998, Rod's trial began, and he then suddenly pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder.
Wow.
Out of the blue. His attorney said he accepted responsibility and he wants to live.
Yeah.
So I guess Rod got a little scared.
Yeah. He didn't want to. Well, it was Florida. They were still using the electric chair even all the way up into 98, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. No one wants to sit on Old Sparky.
No.
That sounds awful.
His attorney tried to argue that he was insane.
Yeah.
That he'd been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and schizotypal. Some schizo personality disorder.
Right on. Okay.
It's a personality disorder characterized by thought disorder, paranoia, a characteristic form of social anxiety, derealization, transient psychosis, and unconventional beliefs. So, a lot of crap going on.
Yeah, that kind of ticks off a few boxes there too.
A University of Florida psychologist further claimed that Rod would sometimes claim to witness spiritual things like angels and demons.
Mm-hmm.
Rod did claim that the others traveling with him were innocent, except for Scott, who was just an accessory. So he was trying to protect them.
Okay.
And then a few weeks later, he was sentenced to death by electric chair.
Oh.
Circuit Judge Jerry Lockett said, quote, I think you are a disturbed young man. I think your family failed you. I think society failed you.
I would agree with that assumption or that assessment. Yeah.
In April 98, Scott pleaded guilty and received 2 life sentences. Scott even claimed that he attempted and failed to calm Rod, who proceeded to go crazy and bash Heather's parents' skulls in with crowbar. So he claims he tried to stop him. He further claimed that he never touched Heather's parents. Dana and Charity made plea deals in return for reduced charges. Charity was given 10 years on 2 counts of third-degree murder, robbery with a gun, and burglary armed with weapons or explosives.
Yep.
Dana received 17 years for the same charges as Charity. Both women are currently freed from prison.
Yeah.
In December 2018, Scott's sentence was reduced to 40 years, and he will be 51 when he's released. He was given credit for the 22 years he's already served and is eligible for release in 2031.
Okay.
Rod Ferrell, who was only 17 years old when he was sentenced to death, made him the youngest prisoner in America on death row.
Wow.
In November 2000, Rod's sentence was commuted to life in prison when the Florida Supreme Court ruled defendants must be 17 years or older when they commit a crime to be eligible for execution.
Okay.
In April 2020, the sentencing judge upheld the conviction, saying that Rod was irreparably corrupt, and he's still serving time to this day in the Tomoka Correctional Institution.
Okay.
Grand juries twice have declined to press charges against Heather, so she has served no time.
Okay. Well, she did tell them that they could steal the car.
But don't harm my parents,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, she could have at least got a charge for the car theft. But, right. I mean, I get it. They just killed her parents.
She served no time, and as of 2006, she was married and studying art in North Carolina, but she is still alienated from her family.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And that is the story of Rod Ferrell and the Vampire Gang.
All right.
Vampire Clan.
Thank you, sir.
Told you had a little RPG, D&D connection in there.
That part makes me happy. The fact that this kid, I feel for this kid.
I agree with the judge. Society failed him.
Yes, society did. They failed him.
There were enough signs as he was growing up that this is where they talk about that we are woefully behind in our behavioral health care in this country.
Yes.
That's the reason that you're starting to see some major behavioral health legislation being passed and projects being funded because we need a lot of help.
Yeah, it may not necessarily be about punishment. It may be about, hey, why don't we fix the problem so we don't have this going on?
Right.
And I keep going back, I could have been this kid. Hell, at one time I was this kid. Maybe a few years further back, but a lot of that stuff rang true for me. Maybe not necessarily about vampires, but a bunch of other stuff.
Sure. As we talked about in the last episode, there was many times where I was alone.
Yeah.
And I was a social outcast in what I'm going to say were the wrong circles. And I say wrong because I don't think I wasn't accepted in the cool kids club. And I'm not trying to say that they were bad people.
Yeah.
I just wasn't accepted in those groups, and I was an outcast. And that's why I hung with the nerds and the geeks and the other outcasts. And so, I could have easily fallen down this path had I run into someone that was able to tell me, hey, you know what? You're okay. You're pretty cool. Come with me.
Yeah.
And I've got people just like you.
Yeah. Come hang out with us because we're your kind.
Yeah. I guess I can kind of see it. And I guess I've really never thought about it until just now with this, that's exactly how these cult leaders get people, is because they're able to find people like that. And I guess I'm just lucky that I didn't have one of those type of people around.
Yeah.
That was able to get me.
Yeah. You had people like Keith.
Yeah, eventually later on in life, but I mean, you go years before that. I was hanging out with the dorks and the nerds and the geeks, and because these were the people that I knew. These were the people that were my friends. These were the people that had like-minded interests. But we were outcasts. You know, we were the freaks, the freaks and the geeks. We were,
freaks and geeks.
We were that segment of society. And back for me in the 80s, it was, I mean, there was very definitive lines that were drawn on that. And maybe, I don't know if it's still that way now. I mean, I'm so far gone from that.
Yeah, I don't think that those lines are so, I think they're a lot more blurred now, than they were in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I think that may have just been an action for our generation. Because it seems like that those lines weren't as severe a generation before. They certainly aren't as severe a generation after.
Well, and go watch the movie for just this one scene. Go watch the movie Ferris Bueller for the scene where the receptionist,
the drips, the dickhead.
Yes, she's mentioning all the
everybody
groups.
likes Ferris,
right? She's mentioning all the groups because these groups were all different.
Yeah.
And they didn't intermingle. In my school, the ropers didn't intermingle with the nerds, who didn't intermingle with the jocks, who didn't intermingle with the prep. I mean, I don't know, your preps and your jocks were kind of, were kind of one because they were typically, they came from a little bit wealthier families, that maybe had a little bit more money. Not all of them, but it was very definitive lines.
Yeah.
Very, very, very much so. And I know there's still some of that today. I would agree with you. I don't know that it's as definitive black and white lines as we had.
Yeah.
But that's what we faced. That's the things we faced. So, I mean, that circles me all the way back to where I was originally saying. I think for the first time since I've been, researching cults and reading about cults, I think I'm actually kind of seeing where I could have been sucked into that, had the right, quote unquote, right person
at the right time
come along
and said the right thing.
Right. And told me, you matter.
Yeah.
You're better than you think you are.
Yeah.
Come with me and let me show you how.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Right on.
Thanks for taking that trip with me.
Sure. That was actually kind of interesting. It was a lot interesting. I see that kid. I played that game. That game was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd been looking. I'd forgotten his name, and I had to scour quite a bit because I kept looking up RPG murders and D&D murders, and I was finding completely different things.
I had a girlfriend who, we were a lot about, vampire role play and stuff, just because that's what she liked. And, it was a lot of fun. I get it. I could see how the kid got hooked in.
Well, it took me quite a bit to find his name. I'm so sorry. It took me quite a bit to find his name because I couldn't remember. It had been so long since I'd heard about this, but I thought you would be very interested in this one. So I was glad I found it. Yeah.
I still think they were listening to Bela Lugosi's Dead by the Bauhaus.
Probably. Who knows? I don't know. The 90s, you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you go into I took Kelsey and Allison a few years ago to the Edge House of Horrors, and we went to this one room, but they were playing it there, and I was like, that's Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi is dead.
All right, so that, I think, takes us to the end of another week.
What a great week.
I would agree. I would agree. It's a good, I think we had a good show with that one. Got to nerd out again over an RPG.
Yes, we did.
Talk about an RPG murder. So
yes, RPG murders, RPGs. And don't forget to hit us up on our website. We got our email links there. You can also link to our
social media
there, and see some pictures. And
you can see, we've got pictures on all of our episodes. We had some pictures. Put our links there as well. You can also find our Patreon there if you wish to support the show.
Yes, please.
You can link off of there. We're on all the major podcast platforms.
Yes.
So do reach out to us as well. We do want to hear from everybody. Again, please don't forget to leave reviews where you can. It really, really does help. Send us emails from our contact info if you want to hear us discuss something. I've already gotten a few people off to the side recommend some stuff that they would like to hear us cover, and so
okay, cool.
I'll have some stuff for there. But do reach out.
Yes.
Let us know how you're liking the show.
Yes.
Let us know how you're hating the show.
Yes.
You know, whatever.
We need to know either way.
We'll take it all.
Yes.
But you know, we do hope again, as we're sitting here at episode 17, that you've stuck with us so far. So hopefully you're
17 weeks in.
Hopefully you're enjoying it.
Right on.
So with that,
I've been Zig with your nerdery.
And I've been Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.